Have you ever wondered if the real threat to our future isn't evil, but stupidity? Not the cartoonish kind we laugh at online, but a deeper, darker force, one that wears a mask of normality, that nods in agreement, that follows orders. A force that silently corrodes the world from within, while the rest of us scroll and sip coffee in oblivion. And here's the disturbing part: this kind of stupidity has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with a refusal to think. A rejection of self-awareness, of reflection, of responsibility. As if something inside us disengaged. As if the soul had gone offline, and left behind only the shell. Before we go deeper, take a second to subscribe, like, and share this video. If anything I'm saying echoes something you felt but couldn't explain, leave a comment below. Let's awaken this conversation together, before it's too late. Because what Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German pastor and resistance thinker murdered by the Nazis, once warned us about, might just be unfolding before our very eyes. He called it the theory of stupidity. And it was far more terrifying than evil. Because unlike evil, stupidity can be weaponized. It obeys. It multiplies. And worst of all, it feels safe. What if stupidity is not a lack of neurons, but a lack of courage? A trauma response? A spiritual disconnection? Think of a forest fire. It doesn't start with flames. It begins with dryness. With neglect. With no one paying attention. That's how stupidity spreads, in the absence of thought, in the comfort of silence. In today's video, we're going to unravel this wound. We'll weave through Bonhoeffer's insight, walk through Carl Jung's idea of the shadow, listen to Viktor Frankl's thoughts on meaning, and uncover the invisible psychological patterns that blind us. Because what's at stake isn't just politics or ideology. It's the human soul itself. But here's the haunting question that won't go away. What if the real danger is inside those who seem the most harmless? We sabotage what we desire the most, not because we're weak, but because we're terrified to face ourselves. We crave meaning, yet drown in distractions. We long for truth, yet cling to lies that make us feel safe. Why? Because silence exposes us. It strips away our illusions. And what's left staring back in the silence is the shadow, the unacknowledged self. Carl Jung called it the repressed darkness within, the parts of us we've buried in order to fit in, to survive, to be loved. But what we repress doesn't die. It festers. It leaks. It turns into fear, into projections, into automatic behaviors. And yes, into stupidity. Not the funny kind. The existential kind. The kind that blinds us from within. As Nietzsche once wrote, people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. It's easier to chant a slogan than to question it. Easier to blame others than to confront the inner fracture. We're torn between freedom and fear, between conscious choice and unconscious habit. Most of us think we're making decisions, but in reality, we're reenacting old scripts. Childhood patterns. Cultural programming. Trauma responses. The terrifying truth. What we call our opinions are often not ours at all. They are echoes. And yet we cling to them like lifelines, because to let go would mean stepping into the unknown. Gabor Maté says that trauma isn't just what happens to us, it's what happens inside us when we disconnect from our true selves. And that's the root of modern stupidity, disconnection. Not a lack of knowledge, we're drowning in information. It's the loss of inner coherence. Of integration. Of presence. We scroll, swipe, and consume, but rarely stop to feel. To question. To listen. And in that emotional absence, something else grows, a hunger for belonging, no matter the cost. Even if it means turning off our thinking. Even if it means becoming a tool for someone else's agenda. This is how stupidity becomes systemic. Viral. Dangerous. It masquerades as certainty. It shouts instead of listens. It follows the crowd, mocks nuance, and celebrates ignorance as if it were power. Bonhoeffer saw this firsthand, how societies collapse not just through violence, but through the silent spread of unthinking obedience. He warned that once stupidity becomes a collective force, it's almost impossible to reverse. You can't argue with it. You can't shame it. You can only heal it, from within. And that brings us to the real turning point. Can we wake up from this unconscious pattern before it swallows us whole? What if the real battle isn't against the world, but against the parts of you that pretend to protect you? What if the fear, the addiction, the apathy, are not flaws, but strategies? Old survival codes. Leftover defenses from a time you didn't even know you were learning them. Carl Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So the question is, who's really in control? The adult you present to the world, or the child inside who still fears rejection, still chases approval, still hides when things get real? Every time we numb ourselves, lash out, procrastinate, or conform, we're reenacting a pattern. We say we want change, yet sabotage it the moment it gets close. We blame the system, the news, the algorithm, but rarely stop to ask, what invisible script am I following? Gabor Maté reminds us that the question is not, why the addiction, but, why the pain? Behind every compulsive behavior lies a wound. A wound we were never taught to tend to. Instead, we put on masks. We play roles. We act smart, but we're afraid to feel. We act free, but we obey anything that distracts us from ourselves. Stupidity, in this sense, is not about lack of intellect, it's about the refusal to go within. It's safer to outsource our thinking, to follow crowds, to hide behind sarcasm or certainty. Because real thinking, real presence, that demands something terrifying, vulnerability. The willingness to admit, I don't know. To sit with discomfort. To ask, why do I keep ending up here? Again and again. That question has power. Not because it gives quick answers, but because it cracks the shell. It begins to undo the lie. And the lie is this, that we are powerless. That we are just victims of the world, of history, of other people's choices. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, saw something different. He said the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's response. Even in the darkest places. Meaning, the world can wound you, break you, and strip away everything, but the way you face it, that's yours. And that's where transformation begins. Not in shouting louder, but in listening deeper. So what if the real revolution isn't external at all? What if it begins in the silence, where you finally face what you've been running from? Where you stop outsourcing your thinking and reclaim it? Where you no longer obey fear? Where you stop being an echo, and start becoming a voice? The turning point begins the moment we stop running. Not from the world, but from ourselves. From the uncomfortable truths we've buried under layers of performance, distraction, and denial. Transformation doesn't begin with a loud revolution, it begins with quiet honesty. The courage to say, yes, I've been asleep. I've been avoiding. I've been reacting instead of choosing. That moment of truth isn't weakness, it's the seed of power. Because you can't change what you won't face. Self-knowledge isn't a luxury, it's a responsibility. Jung believed that only the person who looks within awakens. That diving into the unconscious, into your own shadows, is the path toward wholeness. Not perfection. Not purity. But integration. To become someone who no longer fears their own depth, because they've learned how to navigate it. The pain you carry, it doesn't disappear. But it can be held. Understood. Transformed. Pain, when met with awareness, becomes wisdom. There is no formula. No guaranteed path. No shortcut. Anyone selling you that is selling you comfort, not growth. The truth is quieter. Slower. It unfolds in stillness, in therapy, in journaling, in saying no when you've always said yes. In taking responsibility for your patterns, not with shame, but with clarity. As Gabor Maté says, healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about reconnecting with who you were before the world taught you to disconnect. Consciousness is the real resistance. In a world that thrives on automatic behavior, becoming aware, deeply, uncomfortably aware, is revolutionary. Bonhoeffer understood that stupidity can only be overcome through liberation of the inner person. That's not just philosophy. It's practice. Looking at your projections. Feeling your grief. Asking, what part of me have I silenced to be accepted? And, what would happen if I let it speak? You can't save the world overnight. But you can stop betraying yourself today. And maybe, that's where it starts. Not with a mass awakening. But with one person who chooses to stay awake. One person who dares to think. To feel. To face. Because the moment you stop sleepwalking, you stop contributing to the collective spell. And that, quietly, humbly, changes everything. There are no final answers here, only invitations. Invitations to notice. To slow down. To witness your life from the inside. Pay attention today, to your reactions, to the way you scroll, to the words you choose, to what makes you anxious, defensive, or numb. What are you protecting? What are you avoiding? These small moments of awareness are the cracks where light gets in. And maybe that's where intelligence begins, not in knowing more, but in seeing more clearly. True transformation isn't loud, it's quiet, subtle, and deeply personal. You don't have to fix everything overnight. You don't have to become someone else. But you can begin, with a breath, a pause, a choice. Choose to be present. Choose to notice your own mind. Choose to ask, before reacting, is this me, or just a pattern I've inherited? That choice, repeated over time, is how we wake up. From stupidity. From numbness. From unconscious living. You are not powerless. You are simply unpracticed at being fully awake. So begin your practice. Right now. Not out of fear, but out of a deep love for what your life could become if you stopped abandoning yourself. If this message stirred something in you, like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share it with someone who might need this mirror today. Let's build a space where awareness is contagious. And if this content spoke to your soul, watch the video that's about to appear on your screen, it might be exactly what your soul needed to hear today.